Hey, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to talk about some pedal board maintenance and some tips and tricks to get your board ready to hit the road again. Now that the US has opened up and we're starting to book some gigs, I want to make sure that my main large pedal board is ready for the road, and it's not very old. This is a build that I did later in 2020, maybe almost a year ago, a little less than that, maybe 9 or 10 months ago. But I want to go ahead and make sure that I cover all the bases so that when I go and show up for a show or for a session, that nothing is failing on me. This board has been sitting right under this desk here, and I've been doing some remote session work with it, but it's been collecting a little bit of dust, and I just want to make sure that everything is ready to be, thrown in the bottom of a bus or in the back of the van, and ready to show up and work without fail. And the other thing is I need to permanently mount the PowerCon housing box to the back of the board. Right now it has just got stacks of 3M dual lock, and it's just not quite as sturdy as I'd like it to be. So let's dive on in and let's start looking at this board. All right, so here we are with the big board. We're going to do some maintenance here, and I've got to fix something, and we're going to just talk about maintaining your pedal board. There's some great videos out there, especially from Vertex, and I'm going to be applying some of those techniques I've been doing on my boards for years. Now that gigs are starting to come back, I want to make sure that my main board is totally ready for the road. And so the first thing is, it's got dust all over it. I don't know if you can see this, but I mean, there's just dust all over this thing. So I'll usually take a microfiber cloth like this one, and I just want to run it over all of the pedals. And one, this is just going to make it look better, but also dust is the enemy of electronics. So when you're getting dust in any kind of components, it can cause some really major issues. And so I just like getting in there, cleaning everything off just a little bit. Now that I've just kind of cleaned everything off just with a rag that's dry, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking off some of the pedals, not all of them, but the ones that have jacks that are exposed. This desk has been collecting dust kind of just under my desk here, and it's usually just plugged in, especially throughout the last year and a half, just doing mostly at home remote session work. It's just plugged in and it's right under my desk and hasn't gotten used very much at all. And so, it's been there collecting dust, and all kinds of crumbs and different things can get in there. But something I like to do, usually once a year, I do a pedal rebuild, and I take my main board, and if there's some things that I've acquired, then I'll add them in, and I'll run new audio and power cables and just keep everything tidy. However, since this one was built right before COVID, it has not really seen the wear and tear that usually my main pedal board does in a year. And so this is not necessary this time for this board. Like, this is going to last all of 2021 and probably through a good portion of 2022 as far as my main board goes. And so, but some of these that have jacks that are exposed, what I'm going to do, since I have dual lock on these pedals, you have to get something to kind of pry them up with. And I'm just going to go one at a time, and I'm going to take the audio and the power cables out. And then the first thing that I'm going to do is use this Deoxit D5. Just going to spray a little bit in each jack, and then I'm going to grab something to just work that in. Okay, so that is a standard Boss style power jumper, and it's just loose just so I can get in here and really work in that Deoxit. and that's going to prevent from any oxidation. It's going to prevent any oxidation from building up, in these jacks. And so I do that, and then I'm going to plug everything back in. And this way you don't end up mixing any cables up, especially when you have a board that's pretty tight like this one. Got to put your back into some of those. Something that's as tight as this one, it can be really easy to swap, a power cable. And some of these I have running at 18 volts, and you don't want to end up powering a pedal with the wrong voltage just from going in and doing maintenance, because then you've created another problem that you then have to fix. So I'm going to now go and take most of these off one at a time and just spray some deoxit in there, and we'll see you on the other side of this speed up. So one thing that I'm not doing is I'm not spraying the deoxit in any of the potentiometers, because I don't have any noisy pots in this rig. If I did, I would, the first thing that I would do is spray some deoxit in there and then work it in. But that's something that you can really easily damage a pot. You don't want to spray in that little hole that's on the back cover of a potentiometer, because what you're going to end up doing is you're going to blow out the lubricant that's in there, and you can break the pot that way. And so it'll start to, you can feel it scraping once you do that. But if you just kind of spray it in between the shaft and where it's bolting to, you can get a little bit of deoxit in there and just blow out any dust and prevent from corrosion happening in there. However, that is almost never going to happen, especially on, these are all pretty new pedals. This board has not been underwater in any way, so it would take a lot of damage that's happening beforehand before you have, oxidation happening inside of a pot on a brand new pedal. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is I have this PowerCon adapter for the power. Okay, and I'm going to turn this thing around so you can see where it sits on the back here. So this PowerCon adapter, it plugs in this IEC to this Strymon Zuma there, and then it sits tucked in back here. And what I've done when I built this board is it sits in a live-in road case. And so that road case actually comes up, the lip of it, just a little bit. And so I realized that I wasn't going to be able to plug in my PowerCon. So I just stacked, like we've talked before, some dual lock on top of this PowerCon little housing box. However, it's kind of finicky that way, and so we're going to stabilize it with this little block. So what I did is I measured out the size of this block, this housing box that it sits in, and then basically just took the measurements that I had from stacking however many of these dual lock pieces together, and then made a box. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach this block onto this housing box of the PowerCon, and then we're going to screw this box from the bottom of the board. So let's first attach this, and I'm just going to super glue it. This is just an aluminum housing box. It's not going to hurt anything, and it's going to keep it from ever really going anywhere. What I don't want to do is make the same mistake I did when I mounted it with the dual lock, which is I had it upside down. And so you want this tab. You can see where there's a tab on the power con where it goes in and twists and lock in. And you want that to end up in the up position. This is accelerator. So it's just makes super glue harden immediately. Keep it from having to like hold it and wait for it to dry. I think gaff tape has the most uses out of any other just piece of kit in the world, especially for musicians. Let's get the rest of this dual lock out of here. Cannot say enough how awesome dual lock is. It's just the strongest hold, but it always comes up clean, which is often a hard thing to pull off. Okay, so plug our power in, and get this right about where we want it. So now it's not going anywhere. It was just flopping around too much with that dual lock, and I didn't feel like it was stable where it was. So now it is. So that's the last thing that we needed to do. And then while I have this turned around, we're gonna go ahead and finish off the deoxit with these Strymons right here and work on those. All right, so that's about it. The next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna play through each pedal and just kind of make sure all the patches are still programmed, you know, the way that I left them about a year ago. And like I said, I've had a lot of these pedals on my main board. They've been staples for a long time. But right before COVID, you know, I started mounting these pedals that end up on this board, and kind of midway through COVID is when we ended up doing this board build. And so there shouldn't be much done to it, but even a build that's this recent, I still think that it's worth going in, spraying some deoxit. Let's get all the dust and the crud, you know, out of the nooks and crannies as best we can. And that's just gonna set you up best for the future so that you can hopefully prevent some fails. You know, once we get back on the road and this thing sees, you know, all kinds of stages and all kinds of climates, you know, you're playing festivals, you often end up with dirty shoes, you know, from walking around outside, and all that ends up on your board and can sometimes end up inside of your pedals. And you know, it might seem like a minor thing, but it could save you, you know, a few $100s, especially with something like this equalizer pedal that has faders instead of, you know, potentiometers. they're notorious for failing quickly. And so if you take care of your board, you can have your pedals and your build last a lot longer. Just by taking a little extra effort. You know, I know deoxit sometimes is a little expensive seeming, just for something that's not super sexy. But you know, this thing is a lifesaver really. And just having an old toothbrush, or an old paintbrush or anything, you know, that you can just get some of the dirt and crud out of there, I think is really helpful. So let's play through the pedals and we'll just make sure every connection is solid, and then we'll go from there. All right, so here we are with the main board. We have sprayed deoxit in all of the audio and power connections, and then we permanently mounted the PowerCon box to the back of the board and screwed it in, so it's not gonna move now. And the last thing we're gonna do is just test all the connections, make sure we can't get anything to fail. And then I'll just kind of talk about a couple cool parts of my main board here. And the first thing that I want to talk about though, before we get to that, is I'm playing my PRS. I'm going straight into the Universal Audio Apollo, and we're using the Pete Thorne PT100 amp plug-in. I've got it set up pretty clean. Little hairier, you know, when you go to the bridge pickup. But we've got full signal here, okay? So we've got signal in the whole, throughout the whole board, and we just want to go in, basically turn on and off each pedal, and then we're going to press on all of the audio connections. A lot of times if a cable is going to fail or a jack is going to fail because it's loose or something, you can get it to fail. Now we're not going to press very hard, we don't want to cause any damage, but the other thing is, like I said before, this is a pretty recent build, and within the last year, and it has seen 0 days on the road. Some of these pedals have seen a lot of days on the road, but every time I do a new board build, I go and tighten everything and double check all the internal connections and everything. But for now, we're just gonna press and make sure we can't get anything to fail or make noise on us. I'm not hearing anything even, you know, begin to make any scratching noise. So that's a good sign. And again, you know, this board has no bypass loop, so the signal is going through everything all the time. So let's just go in and we'll turn everything on and off, starting with the wah here. Let me quickly talk about my basic tone is the OB1, the compressor is always on, and the Vertex Nile has both the preamp and the compressor always on. That is my bass tone. I love stacking compression. The important thing to note is the Nile is actually after all my drives and the OB1 is beforehand. I like to boost my drives in the front end, and then having compression on the back end really keeps everything to my ears and everything feeling very similar, and it kind of levels everything out. Now it's not like so much compression that I've got no dynamics. I've got a lot of dynamic range here, but having just kind of a master preamp and compression that's always on really allows me to, you know, keep a consistent tone night after night, whether I'm on the road or in the studio. I can get consistent results here. So we'll just kind of go in the order of the pedals. The interface, this is where all the buffers and the in and out patch bay is. Right under it I have an Audition by Goodwood Audio, and that allows me to try out a pedal or have some really funky effect in the studio that's not on the main board. and it sits after my drives and before all the modulation. So we come in here, there is a passive in and out, and that's where the sub and up octave, the Argonaut, which is a dirty octave, and then both of my fuzzes, mini foot fuzz, and the Pelotar are in that because they don't like seeing buffers beforehand. The wah also is in there. And then after that, we go through the buffers, and we're going to first go into the pre side of the Mobius, and then into the OB1. And the boost on here is awesome because I can just change it to a treble boost, a mid boost, or a flat frequency boost. Live, I pretty much keep it on flat, but it's helpful to have in the studio a treble boost and a mid boost on hand. The first drive, lowest drive, is the steel string. Then we go to the Tone Secret, which is a little gained up kind of TS9 sound. Ah, we've got something that failed. See, this is why we do this. Was not expecting that since we've done 800 takes of this and nothing failed in any of the takes. So we have caused something to fail. I know what that was, which is my 3D PT triple pull double throw switch, I believe is what's in this steel string. Needs a little bit of work. So that's why we do this. So we're going to be taking the steel string off and repairing that after we finish the rest of this. So we know that that is an issue that happens. So Tone Secret, gained up TS9 sound. Let's take this down a little bit. Okay, and then after the Tone Secret, we actually jump down here to the Riverside. This is probably the most versatile drive that I have on the board. I think it's highly underrated. It's very open sound. And it's just the most versatile one. We've got a 3-band EQ on here, and it does low gain great. You know, a little more open sounding of a Tube Screamer, and then a gained up. Okay, and then we go to the Ultraphonics. Okay, and that's my main higher gain sound. And then we've got the Kanji by Love Pedal. It's probably my favorite drive pedal of all time. I would say it's underrated, but I just don't think a lot of people know about it. It sounds kind of bad on its own, but in a live band mix, it's almost always perfect. So we've got the dirty octave. Foot fuzz. The Pelotar. It's a great dual fuzz, so it's got a spittier fuzz and a big muff, and the gain knob blends between the two. The treble is a tone knob that kind of works opposite depending on which. So like the left fuzz, the most trebly sound is like normal when you turn the tone knob all the way to the right. The other fuzz is opposite. And it's disguised as a clone, which is kind of a funny thing. And then we have the sub and up, which is our clean octave. So we've got our kind of organ sounds. So whenever there's an organ player, I can take his job. The equalizer sits after the drives, but before the post side of the Mobius and then the Big Sky and Timeline. And it really only exists to help me dial in an amp if a room sounds funky or if I'm having to use a backline amp. This just kind of helps me get closer to that consistent sound that I'm looking for, similar to having the Nile always on. That helps me already get really close, kind of no matter what I'm plugging into. And then the Big Sky and Timeline and Mobius, you know, everyone knows about those. They've been staples on the market for so long, and there's a reason. The things I didn't talk about, I've just got a switch here that helps me change songs depending on what artist I'm playing for. I'll have different parts of a song on these 4 preset buttons on the RJM Mastermind, and then I can switch songs in the set list here. And then right now it's just kind of set up for my basic blues patches on the Mobius. Of course, I've got a tuner that's always on, and so my mute is just having the volume pedal all the way down. And I've got Strymon Zuma and 2 O-highs that are powering this whole board. I think that's everything. Everything is turned on and functioned correctly. So everything's working as it should, aside from this switch on the Vertex, which is something that I already knew about going into this, and then it didn't act up until this 8,000th take of running through the board. So we're going to take this off and fix that. But other than that, I think this board is, you know, ready to hit the road, and it'll have a nice life to be kicked around and have dirt rubbed in it at a festival, and we'll redo it probably in a year. So hopefully you learned something from this. You know, spend just a little bit of extra time and just a little bit of money. You know, get some deoxit, you know, get an old toothbrush or paintbrush, you know, get the crud out of your pedal board. And, you know, as you start going out and gearing up to play more gigs, make sure your board is ready to go. The last thing that we want to do as guitarists, especially if you're a contract, is to get there and then you're having to mess with gear. And so do all of that beforehand. Try to get your board to fail, just like I did. And, you know, a lot of times you can achieve that so it's not happening, you know, in a dire straits moment. So hopefully you learned something and you can have a happy and healthy pedal life moving forward. We'll see you next time. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed today's video and maybe you took away a couple things that you didn't know before of spraying the deoxit and taking a spare patch cable and a spare power cable and working that deoxit in those jacks, and, you know, lightly pressing on the cables and making sure that nothing's going to fail, and even pressing, you know, making sure you go through every preset and turning on and off each pedal, like we found out in one of my drive pedals. You know, I need to repair the foot switch on it. That's something that, you know, I was able to replicate here in this scenario where I have time to fix it. I'm not showing up somewhere and it's killing the signal to my board. You know, these are things that as we get ready to hit the road again, you know, we want to take care of everything on the front end so we're not having to scramble and figure something out, you know, in the heat of battle. And so I encourage you to do that with your rig as you get ready to gig again. And you know, it's just taking that little bit of extra time to get prepared. If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe, and then you can ring the bell. That'll let you know when I have new videos come out and when I go live. For now, I've been Colin. The effects in. And
take 5.
Take 500. Please flopping around too much with that dual rock. You know what? This strap is noisy. Then out of what the fuck?
What is happening?
It was attached. God. This is gonna be a fucking boring video. I'm gonna not be like pissed off.
I don't.
Alright. And show up to... I don't know. Leave that in.
Ghost.
Yeah. I was like, how did I like play something up it? Okay. Then we're going into this. All right, so here we are, and you don't want to. We're gonna attach this little block into.
What?
Okay. I don't need to say that anymore. You know, tone options here.